Well, hey, good morning, Doxology. Great to worship with you this morning. Hey, grab a Bible if you got one handy and meet me in Matthew chapter 9 today. Matthew chapter 9 is where we're going to be today for week 3 in a series that we've called Some Assembly Required. And the whole idea of the series is this. Most of us find ourselves looking towards the end of a year or in the middle of a season that feels like it's disassembled several different aspects of our life and shaken us up a little bit. It's disrupted our work and our finances, our families, our relationships, our church, our mental and emotional and physical health. And this season threw all of that stuff into a box and marked it 2020. And now we're all trying to figure out what to do with what we've got. And some of us are in that process trying to figure out how to put something together that looks as close as possible to what life looked like back in February of last year. And some of us feel like this is our chance for a extreme me makeover. Well, we don't want to go back, but we're really not sure how to move forward. Most of us are somewhere in that messy middle. As we peek into the box that's filled with pieces of our lives, we sort of realize there were some things that were broken before. There are some things that have been broken in the shaking up of the last year. And there's also a lot of stuff we've got to work with. We've just got to figure out how to do it. And that's what we're talking about during this series. Whether we're building from scratch or trying to reassemble something that was assembled and then disassembled, Some Assembly Required is the story of our moment. There's a lot of opportunity in that. But just like the things we buy in the store that say those words in the box, it's almost never as simple as we imagine it's going to be. Even if we're pretty handy, or it seems like it ought to be pretty simple. And so far we've talked about the time that we have and the tools that we use. And this morning, I want to talk about the picture of where we're going. And this is one of those places that we've got an advantage over the stuff we buy in the stores where the assembly or the setup is important. I saw this the other day. These are the assembly instructions for a simple rolling storage drawer from IKEA that seem to ask you to begin way back at step 23 before you proceed immediately to step 1. There's no logic or rhyme or reason or explanation. I mean, basically they just ought to say, good luck, figure it out. I love this one too. It's a page that says, hey, that part we sent you, this is a test to see if you're reading in the instructions. You don't need it. It's worthless. If you're trying to figure out where it goes, and that's why you're reading this paper, we got you. Toss it in the garbage. That'll teach you. And that's not even mentioning some of the instructions that were pretty obviously written in a different language and run through a primitive version of Google Translate. I mean, it's not even close. There are funny examples of that out there too. This one's great. It says, for install and using. It says you ought to co-locate the battery charge, but not place of sunny straightly set in less vibration, and clean and dry place less of iron powder dust and point. Those instructions usually include the warning that failure to follow the instructions precisely can lead to death. Now, fortunately, when it comes to the Jesus life assembly or reassembly of the Jesus life and the life that he invites us to, the instructions are a lot clearer and simpler. In fact, what we said last week is really all there is. Remain in me, let my words remain in you, ask for things consistent with that, and just like a light that stays connected to a power source or a branch that stays connected to the vine under the watchful care of a good grape gardener, you'll live into your purpose. And it really is that simple. But what does it look like? Well, fortunately, we've got a picture of that. Jesus shows us exactly what it looks like when a person connects with him, and he begins the process of assembling them towards their purpose. Where it starts, which pieces are necessary and also unnecessary, and that's what I want to show you this morning. I've got you in Matthew chapter 9. Matthew describes what happened to him and several other people with him when they first started walking with Jesus. And in fact, just a little bit earlier in this chapter is where Matthew encounters Jesus for the very first time, where he observes some of the things that Jesus does and then gives us a summary in Matthew chapter 9, verse 35. In fact, look at Matthew chapter 9, verse 35. It says, Jesus went through all the towns and the villages, teaching in the synagogues, proclaiming the good news of the kingdom, and healing every disease and sickness. Okay, a couple of things to notice. First one, just something to remember. Remember what we said last week. God's plan for his people is to send the full force of life with a capital L to the whole world, one person at a time. Or as we say it at Doxology, to show and to tell who Jesus is and what he's like wherever we're sent, from our neighborhoods to the nations. It's not just what we're called, it's what we're all called to. So as Matthew's introducing us to Jesus and reflecting back to the moment he was introduced to Jesus, he tells us what he was introduced to. He met a person, you see it there, who went everywhere he went doing two things: proclaiming good news and making people's lives better. Everywhere he went, through all the towns and the villages. And here's something interesting. The ancient historian Josephus tells us at this time in history, the region around the Sea of Galilee, the place where Jesus walked, was made up of somewhere around 204 villages and neighborhoods, and had a population of somewhere in the neighborhood of 3 million people. So if you want a rough equivalent, think of all the towns and the neighborhoods in Tarrant, Parker, and Johnson counties. And what did Jesus know about the world where he was walking? Well, the passage tells us he knew it was a world where there were kingdoms colliding that needed good news, where sickness and disease were everywhere. And if you back up earlier in the chapter, where evil was at work, where religion was powerful but also corrupt. So people showed respect to some religious people, specifically to religious leaders, but they had plenty of reasons not to trust them anymore. That's the world Jesus walked into. That's the world Jesus is dealing with. That's familiar, right? So look how Jesus walks into it. This is so important as we're walking into our world this week. If we want to reassemble our lives to look and sound like Jesus, look what Matthew tells us as Jesus surveys a world just like ours. Matthew chapter 9, verse 36. When he, that's Jesus, saw the crowds, he had compassion on them because they were harassed and helpless like sheep without a shepherd. When Jesus looked around the world where he walked, his response wasn't revulsion or panic or anger, condemnation or condescension or apathy. It was compassion. Literally, the Greek word is splanchnizomai. You almost can't say it without sounding like your guts are about to come out of your mouth, right? Because that's the word. It's not pity. It's not just sentimental. Here's what it's like. It reminds me of something that Carrie and I experienced with one of our kids. We were at a hotel in downtown Memphis a couple of years ago on family vacation. We'd gone to the pool, and some of you know, with all of the gear and stuff, trying to get on a crowded elevator as a family of 5, sort of a feat. Well, we accomplished it as a family of 4. But as the doors to the elevator closed, I saw our middle son still standing on the outside of the elevator, amidst a crowd of people in the lobby waiting to get in. The elevator starts going up, and the last thing I see is 6-year-old Cale standing in a mob of people with huge, terrified eyes. And all I could think as that elevator made its way to the 16th floor was that my 6-year-old kid was down there in a crowd of people in downtown Memphis, steps away from the Mississippi River, the interstate, all kinds of other places that a 6-year-old doesn't need to be. He was in even more danger than he realized, and he had no idea how to get to his dad. Some of you know that feeling. Splanchnizomai. That's the picture here. Jesus looks at the crowds, the villages, the neighborhoods, the equivalent of Fort Worth and Benbrook and Aledo and Westover Hills and Burleson and Crowley and Arlington and Wedgwood and Hewlin Heights and Walsh Ranch and South Hills, filled with all kinds of people, with all kinds of backgrounds. And he doesn't just see a crowd. He sees the harassed, helpless eyes of the individuals in the crowd who are in more danger than they know and who don't know how to find their dad. And it moves him in his gut. That's why Jesus gives the command that he gives. And in fact, the first command that Matthew records Jesus giving him after Matthew begins assembling his life connected to Jesus. Look at verse 37. Then he, that's Jesus, said to his disciples, "The harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Ask the Lord of the harvest, therefore, to send out workers into his harvest field." In fact, that word for send out isn't nearly as sterile a word as it comes across to us. It's not like, ask God to put a stamp on some workers and drop them in the mail, when he gets a chance to run by the post office at some point. Like, send workers. This is a word that carries the exact kind of force you would ask for if you've ever seen those big, terrified eyes of a person in more danger than they realize who doesn't know how to find their dad. We got to the top of the landing, at the top of the elevator, and I'm saying to Carrie, run to the room and call the front desk. Tell them to get everyone they know watching the doors and watching the elevator. I'm telling our oldest son, stay here at the top of the elevator and keep your eye out for Kale, and tell anyone who's going down to drop everything they have and help us look. While I'm on my cell phone looking for the number of hotel security, telling them, send everyone you have to the lobby because my kid is in danger in the middle of a crowd and we need all hands on deck to find him. That's the force of this word for send. And remember, it's not because Jesus saw a single face in the crowd. It's because he saw all the single faces in the crowd. All the faces in the crowd were people who were harassed and helpless, literally weary and wounded and upside down, as far as the eye could see. Jesus models something, and he invites Matthew and all of us who were assembling our lives connected to Jesus to share, and it's this: start with the heart. See the crowds with compassion. We've asked this before, but I wonder if you feel what Jesus feels when he sees what you see. When you see the faces of your neighbors, the crowd in your class, the people in your office, crowds on the news, whatever kind of crowds they are, is there ever a moment where you see just beyond the group, beyond the agenda of the crowd, to the brokenness in the individuals? You understand, people do crazy things when they're scared, and when they're hurt, and when they're alone, when they're ashamed. I wonder how long on the list of things that we feel when we see all of the things we see we have to go before we find ourselves feeling compassion. Realizing that all over our neighborhoods, our schools, our cities, and our nation, to the farthest nation away, are weary, wounded, upside-down individuals who are looking for life with a capital L, where they can finally find rest, where they can finally be truly known and completely loved, where they can find purpose and meaning and belonging and hope and a way for the guilt to go away. I wonder if you feel what Jesus feels when he sees the crowds that we see. And to take it a step further, you see what Jesus says here? He says, when I look at the crowds and I see the look in their eyes, I see that there are more people in the world willing to say yes to life that's truly life than there are people who are willing to show them and tell them how to find it. And look, that ought to go to work on us. Because I think a lot of the times we think about it the other way. We think the harvest is small and the workers are plenty. Like, this is a city filled with religious people. There are religious institutions on every corner. You know what? Jesus' city was that way too. But institutions don't search for people. People search for people. And Jesus says, look again at the crowds all around you. Those crowds are full of people who are searching for life. They're searching for me. They're ready. They're willing. They're willing to say yes. The problem is there aren't enough people with the courage and compassion to say yes to helping them find me. Commission has to start with compassion. Commission has to start with compassion. So what do we do first? Well, here's a big step I want to invite you into today. If you were here last week, you recognize the sequence. You hear Jesus' word. It connects with you. What does he invite you to do? It's not get out and work. That's not step one. Step one, complete the circuit. Just ask. That's what he invites us to do here. That's the step I'm inviting you to take. Ask. And if you need a jump start like I do, here's what I've done for the last 10 or so years. I've got a daily alarm that rings on my phone every single day at 9:37, every day. For me, it's in the morning. You could do it at 9:37 p.m. if you want, or you could do both. When my alarm starts going off at 9:37 in the morning, it's a reminder for me to take this Matthew 9:37 step that Jesus invites me into every single day. pray that God would send people to find the weary, wounded, upside down people in the world who are ready to find life. And every day I pray one of two things. Every day at 9:37. It's either, God, give me compassion. God, let me feel what you feel when you see what I see, because I don't feel that right now. Or I just pray the words from this passage, exactly what Jesus tells us to pray. God, send out workers so that every person who's looking for life knows exactly where to find it. I wonder if you'd join me in that. In fact, if maybe there are some of you who would do that with me this week and on to the next week. Not for me, you don't have to do it exactly like I do it, but as a step of obedience to do what Jesus invites us to do. Would some of you commit to make this prayer a part of your regular rhythm? Some of you up for that who would commit to doing that this week? Who's in? Awesome. Now be ready. Because when you get to step 2, after you've accomplished step 1, you often find yourself being sent as the answer to your own prayer. In fact, that's what happens to Matthew in the very next chapter. Matthew chapter 10, verses 7 to 8, Jesus calls them, and then he sends them. And look what he says. He says, as you go, proclaim this message. The kingdom of heaven has come near. Heal the sick, raise the dead, cleanse those who have leprosy, drive out demons. Freely you've received, freely give. You recognize what Jesus is doing. He says, Matthew, all I'm asking you to do is what I did for you. Freely you received, freely give what you freely received. Wherever you go, proclaim good news and make people's lives better. That's what I'm inviting you to. Now, this is where most of us hit the brakes. Am I right? I mean, I'm good having or finding compassion. I'm okay praying for workers. This step feels like a bridge too far, at least for now. I'm missing a bunch of missing pieces in my life to put that kind of thing together. I'm not talented enough. I'm not trained. I'm not qualified. I'm not experienced. I'm not impressive. I'm not eloquent. I'm not cleaned up. I'm not influential enough. Come on, I don't know what your list is. That's just my list. You got your own list. All of the things that begin with the word not. I'm not. And then you look at the names of the guys that Jesus called and gave those instructions to. We've talked about them before. Uneducated. Likely most of them illiterate, with sketchy backgrounds and deep, dark secrets, who had been passed over by all of the other rabbis when Jesus called their name. The Bible calls them, Greek word, idiotes. Idiots. They had nothing going for them. They had all the knots we have. And you know, part of me when we start talking about knots wants to argue myself out of all of my knots and argue out of yours too. No, you are qualified. You are talented. You are influential. You are experienced enough. You've got what it takes, and doggone it, people like you. But actually, Jesus seems to take it in a different direction than my inner Stuart Smalley. Look at verses 9 and 10. Jesus says to them, do not get any gold or silver or copper to take with you in your belts. No bag for the journey, or extra shirt or sandals or a staff, for the worker is worth his keep. He takes these idiotes and he says, don't even take what you've got. Why? Because Jesus realizes something you and I tend to forget. We only tend to depend when we find ourselves dependent. So Jesus doesn't invite them to overlook their knots. He invites them and he invites us to tie off your knots and decide to depend. And we won't talk a ton about that because we hit it last week, but here's what Jesus is showing us through Matthew and the other people that first assembled and reassembled their lives around following him. If dependence is the objective, weakness, it's always an advantage. Jesus loves to use all of our knots to accomplish his purpose. The only knots he won't work with are not willing and not available. So before you move forward in assembling or reassembling your life, tie off your knots to him. Remember, stay connected to him and decide to depend on his strength and his direction and his purpose and his power and his influence wherever that takes you and wherever it sends you. And the last thing you see in this passage is the team lift. When you read through chapter 10, the parallel passages in the other Gospels, Jesus sends them out in pairs. because complementary parts fit together. So he invites us to lift as a team. What you begin to find, not only do they need him, he designed it so they'd need to depend on each other as well, even if they didn't realize it. It's part of how he handled their knots. If you look at the rhythm of chapter 10, here's what you're going to see. He sends them out 2 by 2 with instructions for a short period of time how to live when they're there. And then they're going to come back together as a whole group and celebrate what he's done. And it's not just once, more than once in the story of Jesus. He sends them out, gives them instructions, then gathers them back to celebrate. And there's a rhythm to it. If you were here a couple of weeks ago, it's almost a chronos to it. Jesus is setting up a rhythm that's still important for us today. Live a life towards his purpose wherever we're sent, and then regather together to celebrate, and then do it again. It's important because we need each other. We need each other to help us where we're weak. We need each other to balance us where we're strong. We need each other's strength, and we need each other's stories. Now, that's been disrupted this year for some of us, and honestly for some good reasons, and some of us for some bad reasons. Some of us don't need to be a part of the regathering altogether to celebrate yet. You don't need to feel an ounce of guilt for that if that's you. But I do hope you've got a plan for when and how you'll regather as soon as you're able. Not just because you need it, but because others need you. And yet, even in the meantime, be looking for people that perhaps you've been scattered with. As you see your neighborhood or your own home or your school or your office, and you see it with compassion, who else near you is sent in the same direction? Who could be a fellow worker, perhaps with complementary gifts, sent into the crowd full of wide-eyed people who are desperately looking for Jesus? We've got a community group series coming up in a few weeks that you'll hear more about. That's a perfect chance for you to get to know some of those people, maybe even your neighborhood, maybe only over Zoom by now, who can do exactly what Jesus is showing us to do as we're sent into our world together. You know, if you got a simpler way to find that, find it that way. But don't sleep on the opportunity to go as a team. You need it, and others need you. And here's the amazing thing. When we think about living sent lives, even with everything we've said up to this point, one of the reasons that a whole bunch of us don't is that we just can't picture ourselves doing something like this. When we picture living sent, we picture professional Christians like me. Or maybe we picture some people from other religion who ride bikes and try to poach people on the street to convert them. But that's the equivalent of cracking open the IKEA box with a picture of a sofa on it, but trying to assemble an entertainment center out of it because one of our friends bought an entertainment center at IKEA and we liked the way it turned out. Maybe God hasn't designed you to look like the picture on somebody else's box, but he created you for more than what you're currently experiencing. How do we figure out what that is and how it specifically connects to his purpose? Well, you're going to have to show up next week. We're going to show you how to spot exactly how you're crafted and made, the genius inside of you, how to discover it, and how to unleash it toward the world. You're not going to want to miss that. But for now, would you bow your head with me? I rode the elevator down from the 16th floor back to the lobby. That 30-second ride was the longest 3 days of my life. When I got to the lobby, there was my son, sitting on a bench with a hotel employee who'd been near enough to see him and to grab him and was helping him find his way back to me. And I wish I could convey to you the sense of relief that I felt, the opposite of splanknismi, whatever that is. But I also wish I could convey the amount of gratitude I felt as a father for the person who had eyes to see my son in the crowd, rather than just rushing past to get to his next thing. I got 2 invitations for you today. The first is towards those of us who realize we're the face in the crowd. Weary, broken, upside down, having a hard time finding home. Maybe you imagined all kinds of things that your Heavenly Father must be feeling about you. The anger, disgust, revulsion, disappointment. see what Jesus feels in this compassion, in this passion. It's compassion. That's why he came. Your Heavenly Father wants you to come home. Jesus paid everything you owe. He shouldered your guilt, and he's willing to remove everything that stands in your way. And he sent me to make sure you know. All he's waiting for from you is for you to say yes. And if you're ready to say yes, in your own words, right where you're at today, tell him, God, I'm trusting Jesus. I believe you sent Jesus to die in my place, to offer me life and forgiveness and power to find my way home. And if that's you this morning, would you please let us know? Because we'd love to sit with you on a bench while you wait. For the rest of us this morning, here's the invitation. Let's refuse to just go about our business while our Father is searching. Let's agree with the Father and ask him to do something. As long as there are faces in the crowd, let's beg him to work and to give us eyes to see what he does and hearts that feel what he feels, and to join him in his work as we go. Would you pray with me? Father, I ask that you would let us feel what you feel when we see the things the way that you see them. And I pray, God, that you would send out workers into our neighborhood, the place where we live. I pray that you would send workers to our city, the surrounding areas. I pray that you would send workers to our nation. And God, would you please send workers to the nations? Would you use us? Would you find us? And would you show us how to have eyes for others who are looking for home, trying to find our Father? We ask it in Jesus' name. Amen.